Chapter 8. Brenda pulled herself up and craned her neck to see what Tracy was staring at. The booths along the back wall were all filled. In one booth, an elderly couple were sharing an enormous banana split. In the next booth, a mother was reaching across a table with a napkin, trying to wipe the chocolate smears off a little boy's chin. When Brenda saw the couple in the corner booth, she cried out too. She could see only the back of the girl's head, but she recognized Hallie's disheveled blonde hair at once. She could see the boy's smiling face clearly. Hallie and Noah. They had tall soda glasses in front of them. They were holding hands across the table. Noah had a goofy, dreamy look on his chubby face. "I don't believe it," Tracy cried again, her voice rising over the distorted electric guitars from the jukebox. "Tracy, what are you doing?" Brenda cried. But before Brenda could stop her, Tracy had slid out of the booth and was making her way quickly toward the corner booth, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. Oh, wow, Brenda thought unhappily. I guess I should have warned Tracy about Hallie and Noah, but I didn't know. I really didn't know that they were actually seeing each other. Brenda pushed herself up from the booth and reluctantly followed Tracy. Does this mean that Hallie has forgotten about Ted? Brenda wondered. Why is she only interested in my boyfriend and my friend's boyfriend? Doesn't she realize how sick that is? Doesn't she care? By the time Brenda reached the corner booth, Noah's face was bright red. He was holding up both hands as if trying to shield himself from Tracy's wrath. "I was going to call you," he was shouting. "Really, Tracy, I was going to call you." Brenda turned to Hallie, expecting her to be embarrassed. After all, here she was, sneaking out with Tracy's boyfriend. But to Brenda's surprise, Hallie's features were drawn tight in anger. Tracy, her silvery eyes wild with fury, tossed her black hair behind her head. "I don't believe this, Hallie," she cried, turning away from Noah. "I don't believe that you—" "Whoa," Hallie said calmly, raising one hand in a stop signal. "What's your problem, Tracy?" "Huh? My problem?" Tracy sputtered. "My problem is that you were sitting here, holding hands with Noah, and he's my boyfriend," Tracy blurted out, her hands flying up in the air. Brenda lingered a few feet back. She saw that the old couple had put down their spoons and were staring at this angry trauma in the corner booth. "I didn't force Noah to come here with me," Hallie said smugly. "I was going to call you," Noah repeated, his face still bright red. "It's not like you own him," Hallie told Tracy. Tracy opened her mouth wide to reply, but no sound came out. Standing behind Tracy, Brenda shoved her hands into her jeans pockets, feeling really embarrassed. Half the restaurant was staring at them now. "I really was going to call you," Noah said. "That's so lame," Tracy told him, rolling her eyes. "Don't ever call me again, Noah." She flashed Hallie a dirty look, then spun around and stormed back to the booth. Dropping a $5 bill on the table with a trembling hand, she grabbed up her jacket and headed quickly for the exit. Brenda hurried after her. "Tracy, wait up." A few seconds later, they were out in the parking lot, walking quickly toward Tracy's car. "Wait up," Brenda repeated, lowering her head against a cold, gusting wind. The sky was gray and starless. The wind carried cold drops of rainwater. Somewhere in the far distance, thunder rumbled. "I wanted to pour that soda over her head," Tracy said through clenched teeth. "I really did." "First Ted, then Noah," Brenda said wistfully, jogging to catch up with her friend. Tracy turned to face Brenda at the car. "Your cousin really is messed up," she said heatedly, the pale parking light lots reflecting the anger in her eyes. "Tell me about it," Brenda replied bitterly, thinking of the words smeared in blood on her bedroom wall. "You have to get rid of her, you really do," Tracy said, breathing hard, her breath steaming up in front of her. "What can I do?" Brenda replied. "My mom told me her parents' court hearing was put off for 3 months. That means Hallie will be staying with us all winter." Tracy unlocked the car door with a trembling hand. She pulled open the door, then raised her eyes to Brenda's. "Did I act like a total jerk in the restaurant?" Brenda shook her head. "No way, Tracy. Hallie is a total jerk." "Don't leave out Noah," Tracy said bitterly. "They're both total jerks," Brenda replied. "Who needs him?" Tracy declared, but her trembling voice revealed how upset she was. She drove Brenda home in silence. "Call you later, maybe," she said. "Yeah, later," Brenda told her. She slammed the car door and, lowering her head against a cold drizzle of rain, began to run up the driveway. Tracy's tires squealed over the damp pavement as she roared away. Brenda was nearly to the front stoop when she realized her little blue Geo was gone. She stopped short and stared at the empty driveway. Has it been stolen? She wondered. The front door swung open. Her father appeared in a square of yellow light from the hallway. "I thought I heard someone out here," he said. "Dad, My car, Brenda cried, pointing to the dark, empty driveway. Hallie took it, he told her, holding open the glass storm door, motioning for her to get inside. Come in, Brenda, it's raining. Shivering, Brenda stepped past him into the brightness of the hallway. What do you mean, Hallie took it? Mr. Morgan helped her tug off her jacket. She borrowed it, her mother said, appearing in the living room doorway, a mug of tea in her hand. Huh? Brenda reacted with surprise. She said you said it was okay, Mrs. Morgan said. But that was last night, Brenda protested. I really didn't. Brenda, Mr. Morgan cut in sharply, I hope you're not going to make a scene about this. After last night. What about last night? Brenda snapped. You aren't using the car, Mrs. Morgan said, and Hallie needed it, so I didn't see any harm in letting her take it. She frowned. Brenda, it's not like you to be so selfish. You're really not being nice to your cousin, Mr. Morgan added, staring hard at Brenda. He had a pudgy, round face with thinning red hair on top, and the same penetrating green eyes as Brenda's. Brenda began to sputter a reply, but caught herself. I have to go upstairs and change, she said. I'm really chilled. Hallie said she'd bring the car back early, Mrs. Morgan called as Brenda started up the stairs. She just had a study date. I know. I saw her, Brenda muttered. Brenda, wait, her father called. Brenda stopped and turned around halfway up the stairs. I have an apology to make, he said, his expression troubled as he stared up at her. He suddenly looked much older to Brenda. She felt a pang of sadness, seeing the aged lines at the corners of his eyes, the gray among the red thinning hair. The guy who was supposed to come today, her father said, to remove the wallpaper and paint your room. He didn't show up. He's coming tomorrow. He promised me. You mean? Brenda started, her throat catching. The words. They're still there, Mr. Morgan said regretfully. If you'd rather sleep downstairs on the couch tonight, I'd understand. I still think you should have called the police, Mrs. Morgan cut in, holding the steaming mug of tea in both hands. Someone definitely broke into this house and vandalized Brenda's room. Brenda sighed. She didn't feel like starting this argument all over again. I'll sleep in my room. It's okay, she said, and hurried up the rest of the stairs. Oh, by the way, Ted called, her mother said. Brenda turned again. What did you say to him? Shh, you'll wake up your brother, Mrs. Morgan scolded, raising a finger to her lips. What did you say to Ted? Brenda demanded. Just that you were out, her mother replied defensively. That's all. What was I supposed to say? That's fine, Brenda told her, and made her way to her room. The ugly scrawled words greeted her as she clicked on the ceiling light. They had faded to a dark brown. Forcing herself to look away, Brenda changed into a long flannel nightshirt, tossing her clothes onto the chair by the closet. The jack-o'-lantern they had carved the night before grinned at her from a corner of her desk. It reminded her of her Halloween party. I've got to get busy on it, Brenda thought. It's less than 2 weeks away and I haven't done a thing. She thought of giving Ted a call, but changed her mind. Maybe she'd see him in school tomorrow. Am I still furious at him? She asked herself. She couldn't decide. She made her way downstairs and pulled a can of Coke from the refrigerator. Then she returned to her room to do some homework. She heard Hallie come in about an hour later. Voices downstairs, her father laughing, Hallie talking excitedly. Brenda quickly closed her door. I certainly don't want to see Hallie again tonight, she thought. She yawned and glanced at the clock. A few minutes past 11. She decided to go to bed. She turned out the light. Then, as she pulled down the covers, the jack-o'-lantern on the desk across the room caught her eye. In the gray light from the bedroom window, it grinned at her. An evil grin, Brenda decided. A very evil grin. She shuddered. You're not going to grin at me like that all night, she said aloud. Padding barefoot across the shag rug, Brenda grabbed the pumpkin with both hands and turned it until it faced the wall. Then she crept back to bed and pulled the covers up to her chin. Outside the window, the wind howled, sending sheets of rain pattering against the glass. A flash of jagged lightning cast the room in a brief, silvery glow. The scrawled letters on the wall seemed to pop out at her, then quickly fade as the lightning faded. Brenda closed her eyes, shutting out the ugly wall. She thought about Ted. She tried to remember all the fun times they'd had, but her mind kept bringing back the picture of him in her car, Hallie's blonde hair over his face as they kissed in her driveway. I'll never forgive you, Ted, she thought. Or maybe I will. I don't know. I've got to get to sleep, she told herself, propping up the pillows and sliding onto her back. I'll be a wreck tomorrow. I really have to turn off my mind so I can fall asleep. She forced her eyes closed, but a loud crack of thunder startled them open again. Got to get to sleep. Got to get to sleep. Something across the room caught her eye. Something moved. She raised her head on the pillow, squinting into the darkness. And as she stared, she saw it move. The pumpkin. It began to turn. Brenda stared in wide-eyed horror as the pumpkin, half in shadow, half in gray light from the window, slowly turned. As its face rotated into view, its sharply cut features began to glow. The triangular eyes, the crooked nose, the jagged toothsome grin, all glowed orange-yellow, as if an invisible candle had been lit inside. "No!" Brenda cried in a choked whisper. The jack-o'-lantern grinned at her, glowing eerily, and as Brenda stared, the wide mouth began to move. The crooked teeth lowered themselves as the mouth pulled itself shut. The eyes began to spin, slowly at first, then rapidly, until they were a bright, whirling yellow glow. "No!" Brenda cried again. Her voice sounded tiny and childlike. "No, please!" The jack-o'-lantern's mouth closed, making a disgusting wet sucking sound, then opened, then closed again as the eyes whirled madly, staring blindly across the room at Brenda. And then, as the hideous, jagged lips continued to move, the wet sucking sound growing louder, Brenda heard the jack-o'-lantern's voice, dry as wind, dry as death. The grin widened, the yellow eyes whirled, the mouth opened and closed, and the jack-o'-lantern rasped, "See you on Halloween." Chapter 9. "No!" Brenda's wail rose through the dark room. She sat up straight in bed, her heart pounding. She could feel the hot beads of perspiration on her forehead. Staring in fright through the gray darkness, she saw that the pumpkin had turned back to the wall. No, it hadn't turned back, she slowly realized. It had never turned. A dream, an ugly nightmare, as ugly as the scrawled words covered in shadow on her wall, as ugly as the jack-o'-lantern's grin. All just a nightmare. She wiped her forehead with the sleeve of her nightshirt. And why shouldn't she have nightmares? Hallie was making her life a complete nightmare. Brenda stared hard at the pumpkin, assuring herself that it had never really lit up, never uttered that whispered threat. Then she let her head sink back to the pillow and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. "We still have a date to the homecoming dance," Ted said. "Huh?" Brenda's reaction was surprise mixed with anger. "Are you kidding me?" She had started to walk home from school the next afternoon. A sunny but brisk day with white, fleecy clouds high in the sky. Crossing Oak Ridge Street in front of the high school, she had caught a glimpse of him in the corner of her eye. He was loping after her, his long legs making their stork-like motions, his brown hair bobbing in the wind, his backpack slung over one broad shoulder. "Hey, Brenda, whoa," he had called. Pretending not to hear him, she had kept up her steady pace, waving to some kids she knew who rumbled past in a big red Taurus station wagon. Ted had caught up easily and grabbed her arm. Then, before she could pull free, he had made his surprising announcement that they still had a date for Friday night. Surprising, since she hadn't talked to him since seeing him with Hallie that afternoon. "What makes you think I'd go with you?" she asked angrily. He shrugged and crinkled his eyes at her, giving her his best boyish smile. "I just thought you might want to," he said quietly. "Listen, Brenda, I'm really sorry. I've been calling you for days, you know, and every time you just hang up." "You're sorry? About what?" she demanded, continuing to walk. The wind shifted, and she could hear the blare of the marching band from the practice field beside the school. "About, you know," Ted replied, blushing. He swept a hand back through his thick brown hair. Brenda stopped walking and turned to him, her eyes searching his. "Hallie broke up with you, is that it? She's going with Noah now, so you decide you'll come back to me? Your second choice?" His eyes widened in surprise. "Huh? Noah? What about Noah?" "Give me a break, Ted," Brenda said sharply. "This innocent act is really the pits." "Hallie is going out with Noah," Ted repeated, pronouncing each word slowly and distinctly. His expression remained astonished. "Since when?" Brenda continued to stare into his eyes. "You really didn't know that?" "Really," he replied, shifting his backpack to the other shoulder. They started walking again, in silence for half a block. A school bus squealed to a halt at a stop sign. Two boys about Randy's age chased a girl in a yellow windbreaker across the street, chanting her name, Priscilla, over and over. "Your cousin Hallie really gets around," Ted muttered, shaking his head. "Tell me about it," Brenda replied, rolling her eyes. "She's nice, though," he added, avoiding her eyes. Brenda didn't reply. As they stopped at the corner, he suddenly put his arm around her shoulders. She started to pull away, then decided not to. She realized she was happy they were getting back together. "I still really like you," Ted said, blushing. "I like you too," she whispered back, leaning her head against the broad shoulder of his silver and blue school jacket. "I just think we should see other people too," he continued. "You know, not be so serious." The words stung Brenda, but she forced herself not to react. He still likes Hallie, she realized unhappily. He still wants to go out with Hallie. Maybe he's only taking me to this stupid dance on Friday night because she wouldn't go with him. Did you ask Hallie to the dance first? The words burst out of her mouth in a strange, tight voice Brenda had never heard before. He still had his arm around her shoulder, his eyes widened in surprise. No way, he told her. I asked you weeks ago, remember? The answer didn't satisfy her, but she decided not to pursue it. He leaned his head down and kissed her. His lips were dry and scratchy against hers. She returned the kiss, but Hallie spoiled it, creeping into her thoughts. Did he kiss Hallie like this? Hallie is spoiling everything, Brenda thought, ending the kiss and starting toward her home again. Everything. If only she'd go away. Forever. We'd all be so happy. So, is Ted still hung up on Hallie? Tracy asked, shoving the last chunk of a Milky Way bar into her mouth. Probably. I don't know, Brenda muttered, picking at a hangnail on the back of her thumb. Tracy had stayed for dinner, spaghetti and meatballs and a big tossed salad. Now they were up in Brenda's room, scarfing down little bite-sized Milky Way bars that were supposed to be saved for Halloween, and waiting for Dina to come from her job. Brenda had taken the opportunity to tell Tracy about how she and Ted had made up, sort of. Tracy reacted to the news with surprise. Hallie wants them both, she said bitterly. You can bet on it. Maybe, Brenda replied wistfully. Anyway, I guess I'll go with Ted Friday night. It's our last homecoming dance after all. Tracy sighed and didn't reply. Brenda felt a stab of remorse. Tracy still hadn't gotten over the shock of seeing Noah with Hallie. So, where is the lovely Hallie Benson tonight? Tracy asked sarcastically. Out scouting more of the local talent? Brenda shrugged. I have no idea where she is. I barely speak to her anymore. Does she care? Tracy asked, tearing open another candy bar. Not much, Brenda replied, as long as she can borrow my car whenever she wants. She started to say more, but Dina's voice suddenly burst into the room. Hey, guys, I can hear every word you're saying. It took Brenda a moment to realize that Dina's voice was coming from the air vent. Come upstairs, she shouted into the vent on the floor. Really? You can stand in the hall down here and hear every word? Dina called up. Good thing you weren't gossiping about me. We were just going to start, Tracy joked. Dina appeared in the bedroom doorway a few seconds later, looking tired and even more pale than usual. What did you do to your hair? Tracy asked. The question caught Dina by surprise. Nothing. I haven't had time to wash it. Brenda laughed. Tracy sure knows how to make with the compliments, doesn't she? Give me a break, Tracy replied. She tossed a candy bar to Dina. Dina caught it in one hand, then let her backpack slide off her shoulder onto Brenda's bed. She was wearing loose-fitting gray sweats. Are we ready to kill Hallie? Dina asked, dropping down onto the shag rug, leaning her back against the bed. I know I am, Tracy exclaimed unhappily. Wait, let me get a pad, Brenda said, crossing the room to the desk. She glanced at the jack-o'-lantern, its face still toward the wall. We've got to get serious about this murder, Brenda said, pulling a long writing pad from the desk drawer. We have to turn it in a week. I have some good ideas, Tracy announced, reaching for another Milky Way. I've been thinking about murdering Hallie a lot. In fact, I've been thinking about nothing but. Brenda laughed. At least you've kept your sense of humor. Who's kidding? Tracy joked. Mrs. Morgan's voice through the air vent interrupted them. Brenda, your dad and I are going out. Just to the Smithsons for a few hours. Watch Randy, okay? Okay, Brenda called down. She turned to her friends. Good. Now we can go downstairs and do our plotting in the living room. It's much more comfortable than this cramped little closet. At least you've got nice white walls now, Dina said, as they collected their things and headed for the stairs. Yeah, the guy came and did everything, Brenda said, glancing at the wall where the bloody words had been scrawled. Now it's just like new. Except that, in her mind, she could still see the ugly words, and probably always would. They settled in the living room, Brenda and Tracy on the couch, Dina in the big armchair across from it. Dina had pulled off her sneakers and turned sideways in a big old chair, her long legs hanging over one padded chair arm. So, what are your ideas? Brenda asked Tracy. How does Hallie get it? Tracy snickered. She raised her hands and squeezed them together as if she were choking someone. She gets strangled, Brenda cried. I love it. Tracy shook her head. No, forget strangling. It's too good for her. Maybe we should hang her, Brenda suggested. We could have her tied up and... I think we should change our victim's name, Dina interrupted, frowning. You and Tracy are taking this too seriously? You're starting to scare me? Tracy laughed. You think we really want to murder Hallie? Dina nodded. Yeah, you're giving me the creeps. Let's stick with stabbing, Tracy said, changing the subject back. It's a Halloween party, see? Everyone is in costume? Right, Brenda agreed, writing quickly on the pad. Hallie is in her gorilla costume. I'm a clown. Dina's a monk, and... She raised her eyes to Tracy. What's your costume going to be? A peacock, Tracy revealed, grinning. Brenda and Dina reacted with surprise. I got these great peacock feathers, Tracy explained, her eyes lighting up. And I've made this great-looking peacock tail. I found a bird mask in a store, and I'm going to sew... Dina groaned. You and Brenda are so creative. You really make me sick. Okay, so you're a peacock, Brenda said impatiently, scribbling on the notepad. Let's stick to our murder. Which one of us gets to stab Hallie? Mrs. Ryland said it should be the last likely suspect, Dina recalled. It should be the person you'd never suspect. Well, I guess that's you, Brenda told Dina. I mean, Tracy and I have good reasons for hating Hallie, but you don't, so you should be the murderer. Dina reached up and scratched the bottom of her foot through the white sock. Yay, she cheered, I'm a murderer. But we have to make it tricky, Tracy said thoughtfully. We have to... I need a Coke or something, Dina interrupted, climbing to her feet. Can I get anybody anything? Bring 3 Cokes, Brenda said. Dina disappeared toward the kitchen. The front door opened, startling Brenda and Tracy. Hallie entered and wiped her sneakers on the mat. Hi, guys, she called, poking her head into the living room. Without waiting for a reply, she turned and hurried up the stairs. A few minutes later, Dina returned, and Tracy continued telling her plot idea. We're at the costume party, she began, and Dina convinces Brenda to switch costumes with her. Huh? Brenda sat up straight, the pen poised over the pad. Dina takes the clown costume, and you put on the monk costume, Tracy explained to Brenda. Why would she do that? Brenda demanded. I get it, Dina said, taking a noisy sip from the soda can. So when the clown stabs Hallie, everyone thinks the murderer is Brenda? Right, Tracy cried, grinning. See, Brenda? Everyone knows that you're the clown. So when Dina stabs Hallie wearing a clown costume, everyone in the room is convinced that you murdered her. No one knows that Dina switched costumes with you. Pretty good, Dina exclaimed. Brenda tugged at a strand of copper-colored hair, staring down fretfully at the writing pad. I don't know, Tracy. It's real tricky, don't you think? Tracy insisted. But what happens when I pull back my monk's hood? Brenda asked, nibbling on the end of her pen. Everyone will know that it wasn't me, and then I'll tell everyone that Dina was wearing my costume, and the whole thing will be over. Well, Tracy twisted her face in a thoughtful pose. Maybe Dina has to kill you too, so you don't reveal the secret. A double murder? Dina exclaimed. Maybe Mrs. Ryland would give us extra credit? Brenda and Tracy laughed. She won't give us any credit at all if we don't come up with a perfect murder, Brenda said. I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat? Randy appeared in the doorway, a pitiful expression on his face. I'm kind of hungry too, Dina admitted. I think there's some chocolate cake in the kitchen, Brenda said, climbing to her feet. She tossed a pad of pen onto the couch. Let's check it out. That ended the murder plotting session. After their cake, Randy went into the den to watch TV. Tracy and Dina decided they had to get home to do other homework. We're making progress, I think, Brenda said, seeing them to the front door. Plotting a murder is harder than I thought, Tracy said. Dina giggled. I'm glad it isn't something we have to do every day. Brenda closed the door behind them. Thinking about the murder plot, she returned to the kitchen and cleaned up. Maybe Dina should switch costumes without telling anyone, she thought. Then there wouldn't be any witness to squeal on her. Then she thought, I should be the killer, not Dina. I'm the one who should murder Hallie. She's my cousin after all. The thought struck Brenda funny. She was chuckling about it as she climbed the stairs to her room. Upstairs, she saw that Hallie had her door closed. What's she doing in there? Brenda wondered bitterly. Planning whose boyfriend she's going to steal next? A strange picture flashed into Brenda's mind. In it, she saw Hallie sitting on her bed, grasping a little doll in one hand. It was a Brenda doll, and Hallie was gleefully pushing long pins into it. I really hate her, Brenda thought, staring at the closed bedroom door. I really hate her, and she's going to live here in my house forever. Trying to shake these depressing thoughts from her mind, Brenda made her way to her room, pulled out her government text, and dropped it onto her desk. Peering out the window, she saw the glare of headlights down below. She heard a car door slam, then another. Her parents were home. Good, she thought, they can get Randy to bed. She lowered herself behind her desk and realized with a jolt that the jack-o'-lantern was glowing. Oh! A cry of surprise escaped her lips. It grinned at her, flickering orange-yellow light behind its jagged smile. The triangular eyes appeared to gleam brightly into hers. Who lit this thing? Brenda cried aloud. And then the sour aroma filled her nostrils. Her breath caught in her throat. What is that awful smell? Cautiously, she inhaled. It smelled like rotten meat. Her stomach churned. It must be the insides of the pumpkin. But a pumpkin couldn't smell this bad, could it? The foul odor lingered in her nose. Holding her breath, Brenda reached for the pumpkin top with a trembling hand. Grasping the short stub of the stem, she pulled off the lid and peered inside. No! The cry of horror burst from her lips without her realizing it. The fetid odor rose up and circled her, thick and foul. The short candle in the center of the pumpkin glowed brightly, the yellow flame tilting from side to side, and beside the candle lay a small, dark form. Oh! Brenda moaned as her eyes focused on it, and she realized it was the body of a bird. A headless bird, its head cut cleanly off, tendons and blood vessels poking through the open cavity of its neck. The bird's body lay smoldering, stinking beside the low candle. Brenda swallowed hard, struggling to hold back the wave of nausea that swept over her. No! As she started to back away from the ghastly sight, something else caught her attention, something beside the bird. Staring hard, Brenda saw that it was a folded-up piece of paper. A note? Her hand shook as she carefully reached inside the pumpkin. Careful not to touch the putrid corpse, her fingers wrapped around the paper and pulled it out. The foul smell overwhelmed her. She started to gag. The waves of nausea rolled up from her stomach, one after the other. Somehow she managed to unfold the paper and read on the dark scrawled words, "You're next, on Halloween." Then, with a moan of surrender, she leaned over her desk and started to vomit.